Hello and a very warm welcome to the Real Talk, yet another opportunity for us to share and learn, hoping that your day is going well. My name is Jackie Lumbasi. Always a pleasure to bring you these stories that I do hope inspire you and get a few things in your life to change. That's the whole idea behind the Real Talk. We're at Mythos Boutique Hotel. My good friends at Mythos are waiting to serve you. So come around on social media. They are Hotel Mythos, that's on Twitter. And then they have a beautiful restaurant upstairs. If you have a small engagement party or a work-related lunch, you can come through. Find them on Twitter, atmosphere_KGL. Today, we are talking finances. You must have heard about Credit Reference Bureau. What does that mean? We're about financial inclusion, something that we throw around quite a lot. So we have an opportunity to learn from someone who's been in the financial space for long. Time for us to learn. So let's meet the guest. Welcome to the Real Talk. Use the hashtag if along the way you have a comment, you have a question. Both the guest and I will be online. Use the hashtag The Real Talk and we will come to you. Our guest is Sam Tayengwa. Sam is the CEO of Transunion Rwanda. Thank you for honoring our invitation, Sam.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Jackie, for having me on your show.
Thank you. What do you do at Transunion? Who is Transunion? Before I even get to know about you. What does Transunion do?
Well, look, the first part is to actually demystify the brand, right? So
yes, please.
Everyone knows CRB and Transunion, which is a global business. Our headquarters are in the USA and in Africa, in South Africa. We bought CRB in about 2016. So CRB, which was running in the East African bloc, is part of our franchise businesses in what we call Africa regions. So Transunion is a credit reference bureau, which now is in Rwanda, or known as CRB in Rwanda.
Why did I ever think that CRB was a government entity and, not one that could be bought easily or franchised easily?
I think because it always stands in the gap when you're dealing between consumers and lenders.
Yes.
And whenever there's a problem, people always say, go to CRB.
Yeah.
So that has created this notion that probably it's a government entity, but we're actually a private owned business. Yeah.
That's great. So you'll tell us more about that
I'll tell you more about
later.
That. Yeah.
Let's get to know you as a person. Take us back to your early days. Where were you raised? What kind of child were you? You're a bubbly human being. I wonder if that's how you spent your early years.
Yeah, so I'm born and bred in Zimbabwe. That's where I was born.
Yeah.
For pretty much of my young to adult life. That's where I went to school, did my early education in Zimbabwe. And mid about 2007, that's when I left Zimbabwe to go to South Africa as part of the economic migration that was hitting Zimbabwe in about 2007, 2008, thereabout. Yeah. That's where I then moved to South Africa. But yeah, I'm a Zimbabwean,
good.
South African resident. Now I'm here in Rwanda. So I'm Pan-African.
Very Pan-African. When you moved out in 2007, did you go with your family, as a family? And how many siblings are you? How your parents? What kind of environment were you raised in?
So, because life was really starting to become a bit tough, we all had to find ways to fend for our parents. When they are old, you have to find a way to fend for them. So myself and my siblings, we left and went to South Africa. I've got 4 siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. But my brothers moved back to Zimbabwe around about 2015. My 2 sisters are still in South Africa.
All right.
Yeah.
So the parents remained in...
So the parents remained in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And
how were your school days? What kind of student were you?
Very interesting.
Happy, jumpy one, or were you the one that would take the back bench and keep quiet?
No, I was a group A student or group 1 student. I don't know if that makes sense in today's schooling. But
it does.
I used to sit on the first group. Yeah, I think I was a well-behaved student. My parents never came to school for any problems, if I can remember very well.
No suspension, no jumping off the fence, no punching someone's nose.
None of that. I was actually a prefect in primary school. I was a prefect in my secondary school. I was a senior prefect in my high schooling. So I think I was a well-behaved student.
But let me tell you something. Where I went to school during my time, most of the prefects were not the very disciplined ones. It was a trick that teachers used to tame stubborn students.
I
So be
can't
careful.
believe that, but I
Yes.
think I was one of the better grain. Yeah, yeah.
That is
For
good.
my secondary school, I went to a all-boys school.
Okay.
It was a missionary school in the eastern side of Zimbabwe called Bernard Mzeki College. That's where I did my secondary school before I moved on to my high school in Harare.
All right. Then, do you have any memories, pleasant memories that you want to share with us from that time? Anything that stands out? You look at yourself today and you're saying, I might be this financial guy, but man, I had this stupid thing that I did many years ago.
Wow. Well, there are quite a lot. There are quite a lot naughty memories, if I can recall.
I love
Because
naughty memories.
I think my mom read that scripture in the Bible that says, "Spare the rod, spoil the child." So I used to get a
It's an
hiding.
African mom.
Yes, I used to get a hiding a lot. Yeah, I used to get a hiding a lot. But I think the way we grew up as a family probably shaped a lot of who I've become today. I remember seeing my mom and dad working extremely hard. You know, we didn't grow up in the middle class, as you would like to call it in this day. They worked extra hard to put food on the table for us.
What were they doing?
Well, my father was working in a hotel in Victoria Falls called Elephant Hills, and my mom was a trader.
Oh, yeah.
So she actually used to cross the border to go to South Africa to
Big
sell stuff, you know, bring money for us to go to school.
Wow.
That's pretty much how I remember my childhood. You know,
She would carry some things into South Africa, sell them and bring stuff from South Africa and sell them in Zimbabwe.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. It was quite, yeah. So you also learn to be self-sufficient because most of the time the adults in the family are not there because we're living in Harare. My father is working more than 800 kilometers away from home. And some of the time my mom has to go to South Africa to sell. So the older siblings become the deputy parents.
The deputy parents,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, and they used to beat the young ones like myself.
They used to beat you. Oh my goodness.
So,
yeah. What did you want to become? You know, growing under those circumstances and watching your parents. If the thought, I'm sure, crossed your mind, and I think if I ever go through college, this is what I want to do with myself.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd always have wanted to do is to make sure that my parents are fine, right? You know, make sure I provide for them and they get a better life because I grew up seeing them working extra hard. But in terms of career, I wanted to be a doctor. I don't know how I didn't end up being one, but I wanted to become a doctor. A pediatrician.
Okay.
Because of the love for kids. You know, whenever I see kids struggling, you know, babies crying, touches me, breaks my heart.
You want to nurse them.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to become.
Then you ended up becoming something else.
Then I ended totally different
What
path.
changed your mind? What happened?
When I was doing my A levels, you know, in Zimbabwe, corporate companies would come and do career sort of guidance and career planning for students. So different companies would come. And I remember at the time, one of the companies that came through was an insurance company called Zimnat Lion. And let's just say they sold a good story. That's how I ended up in the finance.
You found yourself there.
I thought insurance was an amazing thing, like, you know, utmost good faith. They were throwing these terms, right? Utmost good faith, putting you back in the financial position you were before, securing your assets, all that stuff, right? So, yeah, I took a different route. Like, let me try this insurance thing. Yeah. So I started working out for an insurance company actually in Zimbabwe.
How was that?
That was it. That was it. That's how I ended up here.
Okay. So you did insurance time. Then how did we end up here?
So I started my work career around about 2003, working for Zimnat Lion up to about 2007. So I worked within the group between the short-term insurance company and the reinsurance company. And then 2007, that's when the economic migration hit me, and I was like, okay, I have to make a plan. So that's how I moved to South Africa. And when I moved to South Africa, I was fortunate to find a job with a company called Discovery Health. So it's one of the biggest medical insurance companies in South Africa. And within Discovery Health, I was head of pricing for a division called Pru Health, which sells medical insurance in the UK. And that's where my love for data started, because Discovery came up with a concept called Vitality, which is behavioral, you know, using data to look at human behavior around how you eat, around how you exercise, and all of that was linked to your premiums, right? So the way you
That's
exercise,
interesting.
yeah, the way you
Yeah.
exercise, the way you eat, which means you're healthy, then you claim less.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you pay more?
No, so
Do
so
you
your
pay
premiums,
less?
your premiums would actually even start reducing over time because you're not claiming more, right? Depending on the
Yeah.
plan type that you're on.
Yeah.
So I really started to enjoy the world of data and the insights that data can actually, produce for you to understand, I would just say, the world of the human behavior.
I would need like 3 days with you too, because I am a very big fan of insurance, and I know it takes quite a bit of learning. And then when you bring in data, now you've totally knocked me off. I am not in this room with you. I'm not in this room with you at all. And what you're
It is
saying,
it is an
data and how important it
it is
is.
it is an interesting study because
Yeah.
everything we are doing today in today's world now
Yeah.
is driven by data. Everything,
And I
right?
read somewhere that much as we have enough data out here, we're not using it sufficiently.
Correct.
And
Correct.
is that a global problem?
It's a global problem, but other continents or other regions or other countries are better because of skills development, and the appreciation of, the science behind the utilization of data and how it informs, whether it's strategies, whether it's policy, whether it's governance. It varies. Whether it's products or solutions that can come out of data, other regions and countries are slightly ahead,
Yeah.
but I think we're catching up, right?
At least we're doing something.
Yeah, we're catching up. We're
Yeah.
catching up.
Coming from data, now that you talk about data, let's talk about financial inclusion. And how does data come to play? Because I know that that's your area of strength. And
Yeah.
I wonder, give us imagine you're speaking to someone who does not have an idea.
Yeah.
Speak to me like a
Yeah.
nursery child about
Yeah.
financial inclusion.
Yeah.
And take it back home. Because I remember you saying,
Yeah.
growing up, you saw how your parents struggled and you wanted a better life for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you look at that time and where you are today,
Yeah.
how do these two merge?
Well, let me try and break it down in the most simplest.
Please, Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you think about financial inclusion, we're talking about the excluded populace of our societies or communities, right? People that have historically been disadvantaged or disfranchised from having easy access to financial products or financial services, right? By structure of society, by structure of communities, whether they never went to a formal type of work, whether they never had any formal business that they were running, that they could record data somewhere that they could present to a bank, and the bank can see them as a formidable customer that they can, lend their products or lend their services to. Also, financial inclusion. You're looking at, the community that is outside of your urban structures, right? People that are in the rural setup. These are people that don't have access to your formal banking community.
Yes.
Right. So there are different structures when you talk of financial inclusion. There's what we call the underserved, right? These are have some bit of access to financial products. The banks have mechanisms to give them some form of banking products. I'm not sure about the Rwanda structure, but where I grew up, post office was a big mechanism to try and reach out the people that were not in the city. So you probably go to a post office.
It was the same case here.
Exactly.
It used to
Yeah.
be big back then. We
Yes.
still have post office
Yes.
in existence, no, but maybe not as used as
Exactly.
back then. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you get a registered mail. Somebody has sent you money in a registered mail.
Yeah.
So it was a mechanism to reach people that were outside of the banking community, right? Or the reach of the banking community. Then you have what we call the invisible populace. So these are people that the banks don't even have access of. The banks don't even see, right? They don't even know that they exist. Right?
Yet they do exist.
Yet they do exist.
Yeah.
Right? These are people that someone is in Rusizi there.
Yeah.
There's no way to reach to that person, right? So financial inclusion is now efforts to try and present all these products and services in front of these people, right? Using different models or different mechanisms or tapping into the ecosystem that we have. I'm sure you've heard of fintechs, right?
Yeah.
So how do we leverage things like telcos to reach out to the people that would not have been able to access those financial products, right? So like in Rwanda, clear case, when you look into mobile money, services, whether it's Momo or it's Airtel Money, the ability that you could be as far away as you can be and still be able to receive money is what we start talking about as financial inclusion. But it goes beyond that, right? So you ask me, my parents, they never went to work in a formal corporate where they would have access to a pay slip, right? But my mom, I remember her going to sell, and she would keep a register of all the things that she have sold. She'll have enough money that if she was to be considered as a potential candidate for a bigger grant or loan by a bank, she could grow her business, right?
Yes, but because she was in the informal sector.
She was in the informal sector.
Even if she presented a document like this,
the banks are
they
rudimental.
wouldn't look at her. Yeah.
They're rudimental. They use conventional ways to rate people based on structured data, right? Based on data that is presentable, that they understand and part of their own systems and policies, etc. So if I look into even historically how my parents tried to grow and build a livelihood for us, they also lacked access to financial products because they never had the right documentations that would be required of them by the banks. I'm sure if my mom would have had an opportunity to get be it a $10,000 loan, she would have grown her business.
Yeah.
Right. But she had to just continue recycling the little that she had, crossing the border and coming back. So when we now talk of financial inclusion in the sense of where we are today, we're now modernized. We now know a lot. We now, can solve better. The ecosystem has grown. Telcos have come into play. Governments are now heavily involved. I give credence to the Rwanda government, the central bank in Rwanda, very much involved in solving for financial inclusion, right? Trying to ensure that the populace that were excluded can now be included in the financial discourse. People can have access to meaningful financial products and services.
Yeah. Why should anyone care about that? From a family, from the family unit, going up to the employer, the government, why should we be concerned about those that are not included?
Wow.
Why should we care?
Because they drive the economy, Jackie. If we talk about growth in the economy, we talk of utilization, we talk of people being able to consume, right, goods and services. We talk of the circulation of money within the ecosystem, right? So if people have access to money, they can be buying services, they can be buying products, they can be buying goods, and that in itself grows the economy. But more than anything else, I mean, let's just understand why we're so concerned about financial inclusion. The SDG goals, right? The number one of the SDG goals is what? Poverty reduction.
Yep. Zero poverty.
Zero poverty.
Yeah.
How do you solve for poverty if you don't empower the people to fend for themselves?
Impossible.
Impossible, right? So when we start talking of financial inclusion, we now want to empower the community. We want to empower the populace to start fending for themselves, right? Somebody who was doing some seed farming, a small farm within their yard, can now get access to money to buy more inputs to produce more, can get more money to even start an extra business or hustle. I don't know what terms people call them, right? To
Side hustle.
Side hustle.
Yeah.
To fend for themselves. That's why governments should be caring for this or concerned about financial inclusion.
Yeah.
You are giving back to a community that you want to start empowering itself, right? For better sustainability. That's the number one SDG. If you think about the second SDG, what does it talk about? Zero hunger, reduction to hunger.
True.
Right. So if you give people access to be able to fend for themselves, they feed themselves.
They feed themselves. They will not sleep hungry.
They will not sleep hungry. I mean, there are governments in Africa that we know that actually give what we call social grants, which is money to keep people alive or sustaining their livelihoods. It works. It works in some instances. But what it actually does is it's reducing the ability for people to fend for themselves because you're just giving them some money to go and buy a piece of meal so that they can live for the day. But when you empower people, right, an empowered society can actually feed itself. So number one, you have really started working on reducing your poverty structures. You are now being able to create healthy families because now they can feed themselves. And a family that can feed itself speaks to the third SDG, right, which is health.
Health.
Health and well-being.
Yes.
Right. How
And they can treat themselves.
They can treat themselves.
Yes.
You see how it becomes a dominoes, effect, right? It's a dominoes effect. You solve for one, you solve it so well, it rolls down. The fourth one is about education. If I'm empowered and I've got money, I can send my kids to school. I don't always have to rely on government subsidy.
Yeah.
So it's a dominance effect. So we need to seriously take this issue of financial inclusion because, and I'm so glad to be in Rwanda talking about this because I think in 2018, Rwanda opened its gates to be, audited on the UN SDGs. And they're doing an amazing job because Rwanda is a country that has anchored itself in solving the SDGs. There is a strategic plan to solving these SDGs. And financial inclusion is one of the key instruments to actually start addressing the SDGs as you go down, to the 17th one. We actually have a project we are running with other market actors called Financial Inclusion, Empowering Women and SMEs, right? Because we actually believe that women are a very critical component of this equation. Right?
They're a driving force.
The driving force.
They hold the family.
They hold the family. So when you empower the women that are in our community, you're addressing the gender disparity again, one of the SDGs.
One of the SDGs. Yeah.
So it is a very critical, and I speak with an open heart and mind to say if we take it seriously as a government, we take it seriously as private sector, we come together and we say, how do we solve for this? I kid you not. There's a strategic plan to bring Rwanda into middle class by your mid-2030s. It's possible. It's achievable. You will see less. Yes, you will see less reliance on government subsidies.
Yeah.
You see less reliance on government support, and now government can spend money on other things that can actually change the economy, grow the economy, infrastructure development, and etc. But it starts with one thing.
Yeah.
Let's empower the community. Let's empower the people. Let's give them access to what they lacked before. They were defranchised.
I would love to know what, that passion with which you speak. I want to know what it is, or that moment that made you so devoted to this call. Do you have an incident? Do you have
I watched my mother carrying a bag.
Yes.
Carrying a bag and carrying luggages, putting it on the bus, going down to South Africa. All right, I saw that with my own eyes. Coming back, giving a message, I'll be landing or I'll be at this time, come to the bus stop to get the stuff I've come with. Watching her running in the area or in our community, selling those things, right? And then going back again. That speaks to, again, if you empower your community and you give them access to what they really desire, they can grow themselves. It's a no-brainer. So when I watched that and I saw that, and even now with initiatives here to say, let's empower women, it speaks more to that for me because I saw my own mother doing that.
Yeah.
And I can relate. When I see the conversation.
It's not just stories that you read in books.
It's not just stories I read in books.
Something you lived through.
I lived through, and we went to school through that. No respect to say my father was not involved.
He was involved,
in case
yes.
I might want to start.
Yeah.
But I witnessed.
Your father played his part.
He played his part, right? And I saw how my mother worked hard to put food on the table for us. Worked hard, take us to school, right? And it's the same in these communities.
It's the story of a lot of us.
Every household,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm so passionate about how do we empower women, and I've got a few stuff that I do in the market. I'd started a couple of shows with some of the CEOs in the banking sector.
Great.
We recently did one with BPR called CEO Fireside Chat. I was on talk with the MD, Patience Mutesi, looking into how can BPR be part of that as well, and I'm talking to the rest of the bankers, to asking the same questions. How do we change the narrative? How do we dip into this data to see the insights that it can help us to solve for the gap that exists in the market?
Exactly. Serve the underserved.
Exactly.
See the invisible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And empower the women.
And empower the women. We will take a break. Our guest is Sam Tayengwa. He's the CEO of Transunion Rwanda. When we come back, we'll learn about CRB, Credit Reference Bureau. Welcome back to the Real Talk. My name is Jackie and our guest is Sam Tayengwa. He's the CEO of Transunion Rwanda. Sam, I would love us to talk about Credit Reference Bureau.
Yes.
So with my very little knowledge of CRB,
Yes.
you're the people that check our credit worthiness. In a bigger scale of things, what is that?
Well, let's take it back to data, right?
Man, can't we avoid it?
Let's take it back to data.
Okay.
So every time you go to a bank and you apply for a facility or a loan, right? The bank or any microfinance or any institution that is given the rights by the central bank to lend or to customers, they share that information with us. So we are a central repository of data. So when we receive this information, whether it's negative or positive, and I'll explain that in a few, we start building what we call products and solutions. And one of the products we build is a credit report, right? And on that credit report, we embed what we call a credit score. So what does that mean in most layman's terms? If I lend Jackie money today, it's the first time I'm lending you money. You say to me, you pay me back at the end of the month.
Yes.
And I pay you, and you pay me back at the end of the month, which means your score to me is 100% because you've not defaulted.
I paid on
You
time
paid
as
on time.
promised.
Yes. Then you go to Natasha and you say, Natasha, can I have money? Then Natasha says, let me check with Sam to see if you did pay Sam last month. Then when Natasha checks with me and I say, no, Jackie paid me, Natasha will lend you 200 more because she has the confidence that Jackie can service her obligations. So we exist as an umpire between lenders and borrowers.
Yeah.
So every time information is disbursed to us, we collect that information, we build reports that allows for lenders as well as you as customers to see your own information, to see the obligations that you have in the marketplace. And that's where your credit worthiness starts to be built from. Every time you pay your facility, your appreciation of your worthiness increases. So if you also don't service your facilities, then also it limits your ability to get more from the market, because then lenders tend to then be risk averse, and they are either sometimes they can decline the facility or they then approve with conditions. Sometimes, like here in this market, you hear they say, no, we need a collateral, bring us a loan, because a piece of land or a
your
car
notebook
or your book, whatever the case might be, because they're trying to ensure that you still can service that facility. So that's what a credit reference bureau is. Remember, it's reference. So institutions reference to see someone's credit worthiness. And what we give back is information around the customer as well as corporates, because we also don't just serve customers. We also store information for corporates.
So what happens then if you feed this bank with that information about Jackie and they disregard the red flags presented in your report? They go ahead and give me money and I disappoint them. Do you come back and tell them, I told you, I warned you about that chick. Don't do business with her.
No. So the good thing about the fact that the financial service space is a heavily regulated space. The central bank is a key umpire in this. They make sure that institutions abide by the rules, abide by the regulation. The regulation stipulates clearly that they cannot issue a facility to somebody who has historically defaulted until they fix their default. So you have to go and fix your own issues, and then the other institution can then give you, with discretion, by the way. We are only one part of the risk rating criteria. So we give you the credit report that has the score. But internally, the banks have their own mechanisms to continue further the risk rating of an individual or an institution that they need to give a facility. But regulation is very clear. They cannot issue a facility to somebody who has defaulted before unless they have a redress of that default. Yeah.
I think I have my own CRB of sorts. Because this is what I do. I think I got my fingers burnt once, and since then, I don't just lend money anyhow. I believe in, please go borrow money from someone who knows you and your track record.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, it's a track record.
Exactly.
If out of the blue, you and I have not known each other for long, then you come to me and tell me, oh, Jackie, I've got to pay my rent, I'll question you first. In fact, even if I am touched to help, I'll still ask you, Sam, why are you not borrowing from your closest people?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
sometimes, by the
Yes.
time
Yes.
someone is going to a distant person to borrow money,
Yes.
it's because the people around them will not lend them money because they don't trust them.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, they've
But
spoiled their name.
yeah,
They don't pay.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But also now the banking space operates differently because we're a very small community in Rwanda.
Yeah.
We are multi-banked and multi-borrowed. So what I mean by that, just because my own bank is giving me or is not giving me a facility, doesn't mean that I can go to a different bank, because now that's where competition becomes key. If Bank A was giving me 5 million franc, but Bank B, according to their risk appetite, is willing to give me 10 million franc, I mean, I'll go to Bank B, right? It's no brainer. So the
Yeah.
competition allows for people to become multi-borrowed.
Yes.
They can move within the ecosystem to try and get further facilities than maybe from their own bank or institution.
Using data, and then we also see things like poverty index. Who qualifies to be described as poor?
That's a very interesting question, right? Because we have what we call metrics that we use and by the way, this got nothing to do with CRB, right? Because we don't give out metrics for measuring people's poverty conditions. But there's a metric called your bread basket. So your bread basket is a metric that is used by many economic analysts to measure the ability for a household to be able to put food on the table. So usually in your bread basket, you have things, basic needs. You have things like your bread, meal. Sorry, I'm talking from where I come from. Yeah, I know that the food stuff could be different.
Yes.
But it's what keeps the family going. And if
Could be sweet potatoes.
Yes, there you go.
Irish potatoes.
Rice,
beans.
Yeah. The things
dodo,
absolutely.
milk.
Exactly. Those things, even the government uses them as a measure to see the ability for households to afford.
Okay.
So if you can't, in a typical household, be able to put that on the table, you're qualifying below the threshold of what we call the poverty datum line. So the poverty datum line then is a mechanism that says, if you can't feed yourself above this threshold, you have to sit below this threshold. So yeah, there's no one time you can say this one qualifies, that one qualifies. It's how you measure a household income bracket to see and determine your societal structures, right?
Yeah.
That's a very key instrument that the economic clever guys use to to determine our poverty datum line.
Yeah. How are we doing as Rwanda? How does our bread basket look compared to the other markets you've worked in or those that you serve?
Look, I think Rwanda has done considerably well. Like I say, it's a very small economy. It's a very small market. It's a small country. You can't equate it to like a market like Kenya or South Africa. Those are big economies, or Nigeria. Those are big economies. But as small as Rwanda is, I think there's been tangible, positive milestones that have happened. Good example. We were riling up with inflation last year of about 17 point something percent. This year, inflation dropped down to about 5.4%. Why was that so, Jackie? Because of the bumper harvest. And kudos to the Ministry of Agriculture and their other ministerial colleagues who have rallied together to ensure that there is enough food in Rwanda. Rwanda even donated maize to other countries recently.
Yes.
Recently, right?
Yes.
So food is a very key indicator of inflation. The cost of food. So you saw that food became cheaper. It impacts things like transport costs. It then impacts things like even transport itself, fuel prices. Those things start to normalize, or they stay stagnant or constant. That allows for people to have a bit of breather. People can actually have extra income and can feed their families even better. So I mean, if you look into what's happening in the market, it's a positive trajectory. There's upside. Inflation is down. Central bank dropped their lending rate recently to 6.5%. It tells you that the economy is healthy. Wow. The GDP for Rwanda is projected to end at 7.4, 7.5% thereabout by end of year. Most markets are struggling to even go above 2, 3%. right? Which means whatever is happening in this market, it's working, right? It's working. Yeah, and slowly but surely, we'll see the tide turning and the impact of COVID. We can never ignore that. As much as we are 3 years down the line, we can never ignore the fact that COVID had a massive impact and a massive dent on an economy like Rwanda, that probably historically had a lot of, Rwanda imports a lot of stuff compared to exports by nature of the, the structure of the economy. But looking into how things are going now, massive strides, massive turnaround, massive positive outlook in the country. So we exist to actually create a bit of stability between the borrowers and the lenders, right?
Yeah.
We give that visibility to say, when you lend, lend to this magnitude, or when you borrow to this magnitude.
Should I borrow money to throw a birthday party or have the biggest wedding ceremony? Should I go to a bank for that reason? Because it's my need.
I would say, I mean, if you're asking me as Sam, I would say no. I would say, get money to start a business, right? The beautiful thing about Rwanda, we have a strong, empowering government, right? In terms of SMEs, right? There's so much the need to empower SMEs, so much the need to, to ensure that within the ecosystem of the SMEs, we tap into each other, we trade against each other. People are being empowered. I mean, you can even see taxes. There's tax relief on people who bring in certain goods to sell, etc. So if you were to really borrow to start a business.
Okay, I've never asked this question before, but who's the person that should not borrow?
That who?
Should not borrow. There must exist a person you would not advise to borrow money. Who's that person?
I think if you're still early in your career, you're starting, rather learn the art of saving your money than borrowing, because you still have a long way to go, right? So don't. I mean, even when I was in South Africa, I would advise those that early career entrance. You're starting your first job. The first thing you want to do is to buy a car. You're starting your first job. The first thing you want to do is to get a massive loan. You spend the rest of your 20s servicing that loan, and you never do anything with your life, right? So I always tend to encourage the young to say, let's encourage the art of saving and investment. Put aside 20K, put aside 30K for rainy days. That will go a long way when you really need money.
Yeah.
Right. And then when the need arises for a proper, I need a facility, I need a loan, then you can actually approach the board. Yeah.
Someone sent me a quote the other day. I don't know if I will find it. Yes, it says, when a giver becomes broke, the receiver says the giver did not plan his life well when he had money.
That's very interesting.
So yes, I want you to comment on that. As far as this, because my money also belongs to a lot of other people around me.
I know. But you see, it goes back to, again, having your goals, having a plan as a family or as an individual.
Yeah.
What are the things you want to achieve in the year, and being able to communicate, right, effectively, and having a budget, right, and within your budget, stick to it, right. Don't excessively spend if
that's where many of us fail.
If you can't meet some of those obligations. But the ability to save allows you to meet your future needs when you really need the funds or when you really need the money. I mean, I was talking to a colleague yesterday. He mentioned something that was very interesting. He's got 2 kids. We were talking about his kids that have gone back to school. And he mentioned that he started saving, I think his older daughter is 8 years. Said, I started saving for her education the day she was born or something like that. Wow. And I used to put aside, and for him, he could afford, but he said, I used to put aside, I think, 150,000 franc. So he has been doing that for the past 8 years in every month.
Wow.
And he continued to do that even for the second one. So that is now going towards his children's educational.
That's a good point. And one person can save 150,000, another one can save 10,000.
10,000, exactly.
Another one 20,000.
Within your
ability.
Your ability.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we need to do more to, again, I go back to education, I go back to awareness, I go back to consumer empowerment. We need to do a lot to empower our communities around financial literacy.
Yeah.
There's a massive gap and I call on all the stakeholders, I call on my peers in the financial services space. We need to do more. We need to do more to educate the people.
Absolutely.
We need to talk to our customers. We need to engage them. Sometimes someone is just excited. To your point, I'm getting married. Let me go get a massive loan. Sometimes talk to them.
Yeah.
Understand, do they really need the full amount or half the amount?
Yes.
And
Yes.
help them through the process. That's
that's
what
good.
I would recommend. Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
great. I love to talk about money and saving as well. And I think what Sam just mentioned, you can save within your means. One person will save 150,000 a month, another one will save 5 million a month. Don't avoid saving because yours is a measly 3,000K.
Yes.
3K. Don't.
Yeah.
Save it.
Yes.
3K today, 3K the next time, 3K, it becomes 9,000, 15,000, we keep going. Yeah,
Yes.
so let's do that. Financial literacy, as Sama said, let's educate ourselves. We will be back in just a bit with 6 Qs. We're at Mythos Boutique Hotel in Kiovu. You should visit them and go to Atmosphere Restaurant. But the Atmosphere now has their own Twitter handle. Talk to them at atmosphere_KGL. Welcome back. This is The Real Talk. Use the hashtag The Real Talk. Sam and I will be there to respond to your questions. If you have any questions regarding money, please talk to us. I'm sure some would even be willing to come and talk to your family or your company. If it's a group of you, let us all find education as far as finances is concerned. A quick look at your 6 Qs. Sam,
Yes.
question number 1. What's your favorite dish? If I was to take you out for lunch today, what would you pick?
Well, if you were to ask my wife, she would say chicken. She would say
Chicken.
she would say his favorite dish is chicken.
Is that
Or
fried chicken, boiled or
anything,
grilled?
anything with chicken.
Oh man!
But I love I love chicken.
I love chicken too. Oh my God, I love chicken.
So
Yeah.
so if you were to ask her today, she would say that. But
She'd say
but
that.
yeah, so I'll go with that one to be safe.
And that's chicken with ugali, chicken with rice, chicken
Anything.
with chapati, chicken with anything.
Anything
All right.
that comes with chicken.
What do you do when you're not working? During your free time.
I'm working. well,
You're working even during your free time.
yeah. I try to give back. I try to coach and I try to mentor. Wow. So when I'm not really working, I've got quite a few young stars in the market that approach me time and again. Sam, I want to start a business, or my background also is in product management. Help me think through my product. Does it actually make sense in terms of my go-to-market strategies, etc. So I tend to do a lot of coaching and mentorship of the youth. I love that.
Yes, I love that.
And also a family man. So I enjoy.
How many kids do you have?
3.
3. Is your family here with you?
No.
Oh, they're in South Africa.
Yeah, no, my family is here. No,
they're here.
My wife is here.
Your wife and 3 kids are here.
Munya Rwanda Kazi.
Munya Rwanda Kazi. Ooh la la. That is nice. Great. Yeah. So if you're not mentoring, you'll be spending time with family.
I'll be spending time with family.
What is the best thing that you do? Well, what is that you love to do as a family?
Catch a movie.
Catch a movie. At home or out at the cinema?
No, at home. I'm a home. I'm a homebound person. I love being at home. Yeah,
and you've made the whole family love being home.
Yeah.
You're a dictator. Sam, you're a dictator.
I love being home.
What's the favorite book title? Your favorite book title? A book that you've read and loved so much?
There's a book by a gentleman called Woodrow Wilson. Mm-hmm. It's called When a Man Comes to Himself. Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah. It talks about the evolution of man. A man, right? Like that a man goes through different stages of growth, different stages of evolution. People like to throw this thing of midlife crisis, etc. You see a 50-year-old man behaving like a 30-year-old or like a 20-year-old man.
They miss the stage.
Yes. So it talks about that evolution and what brings about that evolution and growth in a man's life. I always recommend it because even for women to read it, because you can actually see the patterns in the growth of a man, whether you have a child, whether you have a brother, you have a spouse.
Yes.
You see their evolution and their growth. It's by Woodrow Wilson. Yeah.
When a man
comes to himself.
Yeah. That's what I would look for.
Yeah.
What place do you visit to find inspiration?
Yandungu Farm.
Yandungu.
It's a farm. Eco Park.
There's the Eco Park, yes.
Yeah. So I love
Beautiful
walking when I need to think. So when I need to meditate and I need to think, I go there. Wow. And I just take a stroll. It helps me to sort of just detox. It helps me.
It's very peaceful.
It's very peaceful.
And that also means you will do most of those walks alone, huh? Because when you have company, then you'll be talking through.
I go with my wife. She's like my handbag.
Okay.
So we go together.
So, but you see, that's a good thing. You'll be talking to her. At least it's not some other person
And I need to
distracting
think.
you.
In that moment, I need to think. So, but anyway, yeah.
That's good. And then what is that song that you can listen to on repeat?
There's a Hill song called Till I See You. It goes way back for me.
I know a lot of songs, but I don't.
It's called Till I See You. It's by Hillsong United.
Beautiful.
Till I See You, yeah.
And lastly, what would you say to your younger self?
Take time. Don't give pressure to yourself. Everything happens in its time. Everything, whatever that is meant to be, will be. Right? I think sometimes we give pressure to ourselves. Everybody talks about, I have to have achieved this, I should have achieved this at this stage.
Within this time.
I mean, Jack Ma became a billionaire in his 50s, right? There's no formula to life. So take time, celebrate your milestones, enjoy your youth with responsibility, but don't give pressure to yourself. Whatever is meant to be, will be.
At its own time.
In its own time.
Thank you.
Sam,
it's been a pleasure.
Thank
you. What a wonderful conversation. I hope that you have picked something here. I hope that this conversation has left you a better person. Talk to us. Sam and I will be online. The hashtag is The Real Talk. Ask questions, comment on what you have heard here. Let's help each other get better. Let's help each other manage our finances better, right? And while you're at it, enjoy life. Enjoy your youth. My name is Jackie. Our guest was Sam Tayengwa, the CEO of Transunion Rwanda, and we do hope to have him back some day in future. We hope we will have you with us on The Real Talk next week. Until then, may God bless you abundantly.